So it's 1964, and there they are, in their matching white and blue striped button-downs. Coiffed hair, is that even a word? Pompadours, pretty boy looks, young faces, extraordinary talent, and they're playing single coil guitars. They're playing single coils that are made famous by the Fender Stratocaster, that are made famous by Fender in general. And they're playing their Beach Boys thing. They're doing the thing that only Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys can do. And the sounds that come from these guitars are just so specific, and there's so much cheer and so much positivity and a style of music that just feels so good. And then shortly after, a young British band with more attitude than they know what to do with comes on the stage. Lanky, skinny, kind of punk, kind of this new thing that we hadn't yet seen before. An attitude and a grit that we weren't familiar with. And there's Keith Richards holding his Les Paul Custom. And he's making a sound that it similars the Beach Boys. It's clearly an electric guitar, but it's not the same sound. It's way more ruckus, it's way more gritty, it's a different sound. They're standing there with a wall of amps behind them, and there's not that kind of happy, peppy, cheery thing that the Pinstripe Beach Boys had just put in front of them. This event was the 1964 Teenage Music Awards. It was the very first one. It was an incredible showcase for all of the new music that was coming onto the scene that is rock and roll, and its inception of rock and roll. There's a rumor that they needed to fill the award show needed to fill the seats, so they went across the road and they gave high school students free tickets to come and watch this music award experience. Imagine you get free tickets to the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, Chuck Berry, and more. That's what that scenario was. It's such a crazy thing to even comprehend how that was a real thing that actually took place. Now, the Teenage Music Awards, or whatever it was called, isn't what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the difference in the sound of the guitar that you'll find in the way the Beach Boys play their single coils and the way that the Stones played their humbuckers. So with that, let's jump into P90's versus humbuckers. I've got these two SGs here, and I've had them for a little bit now, and I've been thinking about ways to talk about them, showcase them, use them, etc. And when it occurred to me, there's one glaringly obvious difference in these two. There's a lot of differences. Let me acknowledge that for the nitpicky out there. But the major one, the one that separates them from each other the most are the pickups. Now, it's possible that when you looked at these, you're so familiar to gear, guitars, pickups, etc., that you saw it and knew the difference and didn't even realize you knew the difference. Maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about, and you're not one of those people who lives in the gear world the way that some of us do. This SG here that Batman would very clearly play if you play guitar has humbuckers in it. See them? Big, rectangular, shiny, cool. This SG here, this SG Special, is rocking P90's. That may not mean a big difference to you, but standard with humbuckers, SG Special with P90's are very different sounds. They look a lot alike, same body shape, same style, etc., but clearly different. So I wanted to get in and do a bit of a deep dive on what these two pickups are and then play them so that you can actually hear them as well. So there's two main categorizations of pickups. There's the humbucker and there's the single coil. Please know that I'm completely aware of the fact that there are a billion more pickups out there, but I'm talking about these two massive categorizations for now, simply because time would not allow me to do a video so big that I covered every single one. But I am going to massively generalize for the two big categorizations just for this video. So first off, Let's talk about single coils. There's kind of two rules of thought within single coils. There is the literal single coil, and then there's the P90, which is a single coil. The single coil, and my best understanding of it, is what you would find in that gold Strat right there. They're single coil pickups. They're made well known by Fender, and what they created at Fender with the single coil pickups. And then there is the P90. And the P90, made by Gibson, is well known by Gibson. These are similar for a lot of reasons, for the fact that they are single coil, the fact that they're made similarly, the fact that they have a similar style, sound, etc. But they're not the same pickup. Just, really simply, they are different. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a P90 and a single coil what they are. The construction and function behind most pickups are the same three basic ingredients. There's a magnet, a coil, and the frame, which is sometimes known as the bobbin. The magnets are cylindrical pole pieces or iron-based metal slugs, little boop, 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 6 of them in fact, with a barb magnet beneath them, right underneath. So little magnets here all along. Please put a picture up right now so I don't just look ridiculous doing this for no reason. And then they are wound with copper wire. The pole pieces or the metal slugs are aligned with each string on the guitar, so the number of pole pieces will change according to the number of strings on the guitar. Within these winds that go around, this copper winding that goes around the pole pieces, there's two kind of schools of thought. There is the precision wind, and then there is the scatter wind, or the scatter wound. And the big difference in that is you're going to find some pickup companies are going to make these, and they're going to celebrate that they're scientists. They're machine wound, that they're perfect. And that's great, because that means it's going to produce an even tone. Since I don't have a single coil set that I can show you, I'm going to pretend here with my iPhone charger cable and this highlighter. So imagine this is a pole piece. This is one of 6. They're all aligned. They're being held together on top of that bobbin. And then you've got your copper wire. So what's going to happen in a precision wind is you're going to take this and you're going to wind it really nice and tight and clean, and make sure that everything, all of these lines are together. Let me see if I can get a few wraps while I'm talking. You're going to make sure everything is nice and tight together, looks really, really good. And in doing so, you're going to produce a really clean and even tone. I hope that makes sense. That's a precision wind. There's a lot of value in this. You're not guessing what it's going to sound like. You're not worried how it's going to come out. You know what you're getting because you're doing it precisely. A company that I know that does this, that celebrates this approach, is Lambertone's Pickups. They're here in Washington. Curtis is a fantastic guy who makes incredible pickups. In fact, my jazz master there has Lambertones in it. On the other side, there's what's known as the scatter wound winding. So exactly what it sounds like, and this is me, making this a little more dramatic than necessary, but instead of that precision that I just showed you, it's a little bit more the way that you'd probably wrap your cables, or maybe even the way that some of you do your strings on your guitar, right? You're kind of getting it on there because you know that either way it's going to work. So it's not as clean, it doesn't look as good. But these scatter wound pickups are actually some of the most coveted ever made because they produced some of the sharpest tones out there. And a company that celebrates this particular method would be Lawler Pickups. I went and met with them a while back. Ooh. And when I did, they were the first ones to be like, yeah, we do it by hand on purpose. We want this to be made by man. Neither of them are wrong for their approach. That's just how the other does it. And both of them make fantastic pickups. So scatter wound versus precision wound is purely preference. Whatever you think sounds better, and that might vary from pickup to pickup. The single coil design detects and responds to the vibrations of a guitar string, which is then amplified and turned into sound. So basically, those magnet pole pieces, they project a magnetic field. the metal string that you know and love so well, the piece that you actually interact with, the metal string, it interacts and it disturbs that field, and as a result, the coil introduces, and as a result, the coil induces a small current. The strength of that current depends on a few things, including the magnetic field strength, the thickness of the wire of the copper which the coil is made, and the length of the entire wire. So if this copper wire is a really fat one, like this cable here, it's going to produce a certain type of tone. If this copper wire here was really, really thin, it's going to produce a different tone. This copper wire being this long, pretend that's one cable. This copper wire being this long is going to produce a different tone than this copper wire. So there are all of these different things, and maybe that magnet is stronger than this magnet, which is probably not true. This magnet is not going to be as strong as a Sharpie is, right? Highlighter, Sharpie is always stronger. So those three components are going to affect the tone. And then if it's scatter wound or precision wound. The most simple design for the single coil for this bobbin is having a small plate on the top and bottom of the 6 magnetic pole pieces. So imagine you've got your magnetic pole piece again, plate on top, just like that, a little bit sticking out, and then plate on the bottom. That's the most basic form, and then you wrap it with a copper wire. Characteristically bright sounding single coils also allow interference to be picked up quite easily. This is something that guitarists know as the 60 cycle hum. It's basically that they are receptive to this hum, and it introduces itself into your signal. It's kind of frustrating. If you don't mind it, it's great. If you can just accept that it's a part of what you're doing, you'll love it. It'll become a part of your sound. So that's the single coil. After that is the P90. Now this P90, like I said, is a single coil pickup, but it is not this single coil. It's a P90. It's a different pickup, even though it does fall into the classification of single coil. Sorry if that's confusing. I didn't make all this up. The P90 differs from Fender's approach in a few different ways. To start, Gibson designed the P90 as Gibson's go-to pickup from 1946 until the mid-50s, and not just for one specific guitar, but many different guitars that Gibson used. The P90 differs from Fender in that the magnets are not round pole pieces, and the pole pieces in the P90 serve in the same function as the pole pieces on a humbucker. And that specifically is to focus the magnetic field upward toward the string. 2 magnets lie underneath the coil, and P90s have a higher output than a traditional single coil. So they point their magnetic field upward because they're not round the way that single coils are, and they have a higher output. As well as that, they're also brighter than humbuckers, but not as bright as single coils. So if you were to put them on a scale of those 3 different sounds, you'd say single coil is the brightest, P90 is the middle brightest, and then the humbucker is the least brightest of those particular 3. One of the cool things about this, the P90 in particular, I need to make it so I can just hold it up here. One of the things that makes the P90 so great is that they really excel under a medium amount of gain. I'm using that term very generally because medium is subjective and gain is kind of subjective. And it almost gives a 3-dimensional depth to their gain voicing. And that can sound extremely musical because you're not just hearing kind of a flat layer, but you're hearing a couple of different textures within that. And that's one of the cool things about P90s. And they come in 3 different casings. So I've got 2 of them here. This one is called the soap bar pickup. It looks like a bar of soap. You know, it's rectangular, but it's got rounded corners. Then there is the dog ear. Now, as you can see, it's a big rectangle, and then on the end, it's got these 2 kind of triangles flaring out from it. Those are the dog ears. And then you've got P90s and a Jazzmaster casing. It looks a lot like the first one, but Jazzmaster pickups are not P90s. There is some confusion there. They're different. And then lastly, one of the downfalls to P90s is that they tend to lack a little bit of the fidelity that humbuckers can create. So they may not sound quite as crisp, which again is a great production for rock and roll, because in that scenario, if it's a little bit lower fidelity, it can come across dirtier or muddier and just kind of provide some more of that grit if you don't need the clarity. So that would be a really good way to go, is through those P90s. Now, next up, I'm just going to start this next section by saying I am a humbucker fan. That is where I've really come to find the sound that I love, is in humbuckers. Single coils are great, but in the context in which I grew up playing, we were always told it's too much noise, and not just like overdrive, gain, whatever, but specifically the noise is introduced through single coils. So coming across humbuckers that were made specifically to buck the hum that you find in the 60-cycle hum of single coils and P90s, it made humbuckers just a really, really easy fit for me because they're so much quieter. That said, just the sound of them alone is something I truly, truly love. So that's my first part of the humbucker segment. So with that, let me also just say this one thing that will kind of set it up, because this one is a little contentious. According to Wikipedia, the humbucking coil was invented in 1934 by Electro Voice. I don't know who exactly invented it. I know it was made extremely popular by Seth Lover and Gibson when they used it in the Les Paul, but I am not saying that Seth created it, and I'm not saying that I know who at Electro Voice or if Electro Voice created it. I'm saying that Wikipedia created it. That's just for me trying to disclaim what I know. So that said, Seth Lover, a pickup builder at Gibson, introduced the humbucker into Les Pauls at Gibson, and it was under the instruction of the then president Ted McCarty. At that same time, Ray Butts developed a similar pickup that was taken up by Gretsch guitars. Although Gibson's patent was filed almost 2 years before Gretsch's, Gibson's patent was issued 4 weeks after Gretsch's. Both patents described a reverse wound, reverse polarity pair of coils. I'm obviously reading all this off because there's so much information. I want to just keep it straight. So, a successful early humbucking pickup was the so-called PAF, which quite literally means patent applied for. PAF, patent applied for. That was brought to us in 1955 by Seth Lover. Because of this and because of its use on the Gibson Les Paul, the popularization of the humbucker is strongly associated with Gibson, although humbuckers had been used in many different guitar designs by many different manufacturers before. So earlier when I was saying that the single coil is synonymous with Fender, well, the humbucker is synonymous with Gibson in the same exact way. Humbuckers are also known as a dual coil, double coil, or hum canceling pickups. At one point, Rickenbacker offered a dual coil pickup arranged in a humbucking pattern, but they dropped the design in '54 because it had a perceived distorted sound, which had stronger mid-range presence. The Gibson Les Paul was the first guitar to use humbuckers in substantial production, but since then, even some models of Strats and Tellys have them as well. But that's not what we're talking about. So here's what's funny about this. Gibson puts them in and uses them in 55. Rickenbacker puts them in 53, cancels them in 54. Here's an important note. When you think about the player, Les Paul, not the guitar, Les played either into a clean amp or straight into the house. He was not a dirty player. He was a jazz player. He was a clean player. That was his approach. So the idea of Rickenbacker, going away with these plans because it was too dirty was kind of obvious. At the time, that wasn't the kind of music rock and roll was. We hadn't gotten to the point of distorted guitars and big amps and so on. I mean, Elvis played clean guitars when he played guitars. That was the sound. So Les playing clean guitars and so on, you're seeing that Rick was doing what made a ton of sense, and they were getting rid of a thing that really wasn't a guitar thing yet. Now, unfortunately, they missed the boat, and they, missed a great opportunity to take advantage of it and leverage it the way that Gibson did, but it makes sense. We miss stuff all the time because we think we know and we really don't. So unfortunately for Rickenbacker, they didn't keep those plans and scrapped them in '54 and stopped offering it for that time, their humbucker. So humbuckers have 2 coils rather than the one. On most traditional humbuckers, one coil has slug pieces, which are these pole pieces that we were referring to earlier, the magnetic poles, and the other has screw pole pieces. The magnetic field is north polarity on the slug coil and south polarity on the screw coil. Now this is a little tough without great pictures, but I'm going to put in a picture now, and I'm going to walk through it. So there's 2 sets in this humbucker. Okay, let's walk through a little bit. There's 2 sets in here. There's going to be the one that I talked about earlier, that's a single coil, and it's just going to be that one single coil right here on top. But then, right underneath it is another single coil. Now you can't see them, but back here you can see all 12 of the pieces. There are the slug pieces, and then there are the screw pieces. So there's north and there's south. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I was having trouble saying the words reverse wound, reverse polarity pair of coils, meaning that it's wrapped in a figure 8 configuration. It's wrapped like that. That's hard to do when you're not paying attention, you're looking at a camera. Anyways, they're wrapped in this reverse wind and reverse polarity so that they specifically cancel out, or so that they can buck that hum. And that's what they're trying to do here, is buck that hum. That's what they did. And that was how the humbucker came to be. So what a 4-conductor wire gives us is the wire for the start and the end of each humbucker. These coils are wound and then set in such a way to reject noise and interference using phase cancellation. And the result is a deeper, louder, smoother sound than compared to that of a single coil. Humbucker pickups contain 2 single coil pickups that are out of phase with each other, and this cancels out the hum associated with single coils. So my favorite guitarist of all time is Jimmy Page, and while he absolutely does play a Telecaster, I think that we associate him with the Les Paul. We see him rocking triple buckers, and he's using that noise cancellation to produce this big, fat, hearty, warm sound with way less noise than he would have gotten in his Stratocaster, his single coil, and his Telecaster and single coil. Yeah, so you're going to see humbuckers. They're just going to be played by heavier bands. You're going to see Angus Young playing them with his SG. You're going to see Jimmy Page playing them with his LP. You're going to see Tony Iommi playing them in his SG and Black Sabbath, and so on. So you're going to see them. Now, they're also played in other types of music. It's not specific to these. Obviously, we know Slash and his LP and humbuckers are going to be making that particular presence. But then, you know, you've got guys like Peter Green and his LP from Fleetwood Mac that we know him from, and he's got a sound that's very bluesy, but it's not that kind of rock and roll blues that we know today, but a really smooth, beautiful, very different type of touch and feel and tone that he produces from his humbucker that other heavier players wouldn't have. The sound of the humbucker is often described as thicker, heavier, and fuller sounding. They often tend to lack the cutting or the biting sound associated with single coils. However, just to be fair, right? Let's be fair. However, they offer a much fuller sound, which is why it's favored by bands that play darker and heavier music. So, with that, let's do a very quick high-level 3 bullet points of the single coil, the P90, and the humbucker so that you have some quick concepts that you can walk away with and better understand which of these that makes the most sense for you. So the single coil has 1 magnet, brighter tone, and humming with distortion. The P90, 1 magnet, more neutral tone, less humming. And the humbucker, 2 magnets, warm tone, no humming with distortion. So with that, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to jump in, we're going to play some clips. I'm going to put the P90's in, play it go through it, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the humbuckers and try and put them together so you can hear this is what each guitar sounds like, so we can compare them back to back. Now that said, if there's something in this video that I missed that you want to hear more of, if you want me to call up the folks at Lawler and see if they'll be in a video and an interview, or call up Curtis at Lambertones and see if he'll be in a video to answer any questions that I may have missed, or maybe even to correct some information that I misunderstood, I would be more than happy to. But I want to hear that that's what you want. If you've got questions that you want me to answer specifically, comment them below. If you've got a topic that you want me to cover, comment it below. I want to hear from you what makes the most sense for me to record next. Now, check out the Gibsunday Tone Shop and go pick up a Gibsunday tee. Please send me a pic when you do, and I'll happily repost that. If you're not already following me on Instagram, please go check me out, instagram.com/Gibsunday. And then lastly, please click the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this. Comment, like it, rate it, tell your friends about it. If you got some nasty opinions and comments, keep them to yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.